Tool number one is a framework. You're starting to realize Mel Robbins, she loves her frameworks. And here's why. I think advice is boring and intellectual. And so I like to have metaphors and frameworks because it helps me to truly, make it stick. So here's one of my favorite frameworks for friendship. You've probably heard it. There are 3 types of friendships, and this helps you be really flexible in your friendships. It also helps you to remind yourself of the truth, okay? So here are the 3 types of friendships. You ready? And this framework is there are friends for a reason, there are friends for a season, and there are friends for a lifetime. That's it. And if you think about people coming and going in and out of your friendship zone in a flexible way, because they're either there for a reason, or they're there for a season, or they're there for a lifetime, you now no longer are gripping. You can be flexible. You can assume people like you. You can stop holding on to the wrong people and trying to force somebody who's just there for a reason to try to be a lifetime friend. This is such a helpful framework. Let me explain it. So these people are in your life for a reason. These would be work friends. You see them all the time because you work together. They might be the parents of other kids that are on your kids' sports team, or they might be people that are on your team, right? That you're playing sports with. They're there for a reason. They might be your neighbors. They're there for a reason. These are great friends to have. They're there for a certain period of time. They're there to teach you something. They're there to support you on a leg of the journey called life. These are awesome friends. But don't grip onto them. Be flexible with them. Let them come in and out of your life. Love them up. Enjoy them while they're there with you. And then at some point, when you no longer have that reason to have those friends in your life, they sort of fade a little bit. They're still your friends. I guarantee you 10 years later, if you were good friends with your neighbor, they would certainly help you out. So would your friends at work. This is why flexible friendship is such an awesome concept. Now let's talk about a season. So these are folks that are there typically a little bit longer. They're there for a chapter, a season. So they might be the people that you met in college. And you were really, really close friends during college. And you were really, maybe you roomed together after college. But then people start peeling off. They start heading in different directions. They maybe move away to different cities or they get married. And so these are close friends for a certain season of your life. And, I find that I had a lot of really good friends that I was friends with when I was a young mom. That was a really amazing season in my life. I will cherish that season of my life. I had so many close female friends because we were all doing life in the same season at the same time. And when that season ended and my kids went to middle school and then they scattered even further in high school, and then all of a sudden the bomb drops on everything when they go off to college, and you don't, like, that season of my life was over. In fact, it had been over for a long time. And so seasons are a beautiful thing. And I'm in a new season of my life. I'm beginning a new season here in Southern Vermont, and I bet you're beginning a new season. So many of us had a reckoning with ourselves about what really mattered during COVID. And it's why so many of you made major changes like my husband and I did. And it's why those of you that haven't are probably thinking about major changes, because you haven't truly accepted the things that you were processing around COVID and the changes that you would like to make. And so friends for a season are amazing, absolutely amazing. Just love them. And when the season changes, be flexible, because a new season is beginning, which means a new seasons of friends are going to emerge. And lifetime friends, those are those 4 a.m. friends we talked about. And remember, you're doing pretty dynamite if you can think of that one person that you could just pick up the phone at 4 o'clock in the morning and call. And you know that they would pick up and just chat with you just because you wanted to talk to a friend. So, tool number 1, use that framework to enforce this flexibility. Reason, season, and lifetime. Don't force people into the wrong category. This is a big one. Please stop being mad at people for not being who you want them to be right now. Sometimes some of the most generous and beautiful and loving things that you can do for people is to graciously let them go and let them grow and let them be who they need to be in this season of their lives. Now let's move on to tool number 2, which you are probably going to hate, and that is you need to take action. That's going to require you to step out of the comfort zone of your couch and the comfiness of a Friday night alone, binge watching TV, and push yourself to get out of your comfort zone and make the effort to make friends. And this effort part's really important. There was this enormous study done at the University of Kansas, and this was mind-blowing to me. And I found it to be, again, another very helpful framework, because I think, you're not a dummy, and neither am I. I know that if I sit alone in my house, it's not like friends are going to come calling and I'm going to suddenly have strangers show up that are going to become my new friends in this season of my life. I know I need to get out of the house. You know you need to make the effort, but we're not. And frameworks and research help me go, oh, this actually is a big deal. Oh, if I do want to change this and I want to stop feeling so lonely and I want to stop swimming in the toilet of comparison and dislike and insecurity, I got to climb out of the toilet. That makes a lot of sense. But this research from University of Kansas kind of blew my mind because it puts friendship into a timeline and hours perspective. Making friends, check this out. They studied how many hours it takes to make a quote friend. And this is fascinating. That as a student, it's very different than what it's like to make friends as an adult. This is why it can feel hard, because most of our lives, we were in seasons where we were forced to be in groups. Like, think about how you're in a group in elementary school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in middle school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in high school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in college and that's how you meet your friends. And then all of a sudden your 20s hits and boom, everybody scatters. And you're like, where the hell did my friends go? In fact, I did a interview with Alex Cooper, who hosts Call Her Daddy. The episode is called, Where Did All My Friends Go? And we focused on this phenomenon in your 20s where you feel like you don't have any friends anymore. And the reason why is because for the first 25 years of your life, your friendships were basically handed to you because you were in settings with large groups of people moving at the same pace through life together. And as soon as you graduate, you're on your own, baby. It's a whole big world out there. And if you think it's hard in your 20s, wait till your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And now you have the tools, so we don't need to freak you out. But this is normal. And we require effort. And this University of Kansas study explains this. So if you're in college and you're like swimming in the sea with all these people doing the same thing at the same time, it takes you about 43 hours to become an acquaintance with somebody. Now, you're sitting in class together. That's part of the time. You're eating in the cafeteria together. That's part of the time. You're hanging out in the dorm room together. That's part of the time. When you're an adult, to become a casual friend, it takes you 94 hours. Why? Because your patterns are very different when you're an adult. You don't have as much overlap. It's why you tend to become friends as an adult with people you work with because you spend more time with them. It's why you're friends with people that you live near because you spend time with them. This is not just common sense, it's researched. And in order to go from just a casual friend to a really good friend, if you're a student, it takes about 57 hours, which makes sense because you're spending more time together. So you're sharing more experiences together. For adults, we need about 164 hours. That's so sad. This is why it's so important for you to have this perspective and for you to understand it's going to require effort on your part. And that's okay. Knowing that everybody feels this way, knowing that everybody's at their homes alone under the fuzzy blanket on the couch, feeling like a peach that nobody likes, swimming in the toilet of comparison, feeling like friendship is so hard. Knowing that, I hope is helping you go, oh, well, maybe I could be the one. Maybe I could get all the peaches together and we could make a pie or some jam or some cobbler. That's what I did this weekend. I'm going to tell you a quick story because I think it's really important. So here I am. I always say, please come visit me. I live alone on a mountain in Vermont. I'm lonely. But the truth is, I've met a bunch of really cool people up here. And every one of us say the same thing. It's amazing living here. And I really want to meet some friends. I really want to get together with people. I want to stop saying, let's get together and not make plans. And so I'll tell you a quick story because all it takes is leaning toward your curiosity. That's all it takes. I walk this loop. all the time. That's right by my house. It's a beautiful loop. It's about 4.5 miles. And I love flowers. I know there's 5 love languages. I have a 6th. Flowers, flowers, flowers. I'm like a psycho about flowers. They remind me of my parents. I love growing them. I love bringing them into the house. I just love flowers. And so this year, I've been walking this loop for 26 years. When I would visit my in-laws before we bought their house, and now it's our own. And all of a sudden this year, there was this insane flower farm that popped up. And by flower farm, I mean this patch of flowers, like an acre big. And in the spring, it was this row of gorgeous double peony tulips and French tulips and parrot tulips. And I would do this walk and I'd stop and I'd take photos, and you've probably seen them on my Instagram stories. And then as those came and went, then ranuncula came up, and it was this like triple petal ranunculus and peonies. And I'm like, oh, it's like flower porn for me. And then now there's these field of dahlias. Like dahlias are mind blowing, just gorgeous flowers. And there was never anybody there, ever. There was no sign, no nothing. And I became obsessed, you guys, with stopping by this flower patch. Just drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Oh my God, I just loved it. I would like Sound of Music with the flower patch, and I'm taking flowers, and now I feel like an influencer that's 20 years old, and I need a cowboy hat with a feather in it so that I can do the festival photos that everybody does. And I just flower porn all day long. And all of a sudden I see a truck parked there one day. And the truck, thankfully, had a contractor's label on it. And lo and behold, that same label was on a truck here at our house because we're under construction. So I walked over to and I'm like, hey, do you know this flower field? And he goes, yeah, I park my car there every once in a while. I'm like, do you know who the person is? He's like, yeah, that's Annette from Fleur Farm. I'm like, what? And I think she's on Instagram. I'm like, what? So I DM her. Oh my God, I've seen the flower. Blah, blah, blah. And then she DMs back. Oh my gosh, really? It's a labor of love. It's a hobby. A hobby? Yeah, I work full time. And I've been really worried about like how I'm going to get all the dahlia bulbs out. And I'm like, well, I'll help you. You'll help me? And so next thing you know, just by following the energy, following the connection, leaning into this season of my life, leaning into the curiosity, I DM her. She DMs back. I come to find out that she has been planting flowers in this new season of her life. She sells bulbs online. She is going through some stuff personally. And I'm like, well, I know some other women. I'll get these other women that I know to come and hang out with us. And I'll see if we can't like make something happen. And so we get 13 women to show up at the flower field on Saturday. I didn't know any of these women. And I knew some of them. I knew the ones that I invited. And then the friends that I invited invite other friends. And it was this army of new women here in southern Vermont that showed up to help another woman dig dahlias out of a field on a Saturday. And she and I have been texting ever since. So I met all these new people. We connected over something we're interested in. We now have a group chat called the Dynamite Dahlia Dames. And so Annette and I are texting. Wait to hear this. When we both showed up, she said to everybody, I'm so overwhelmed because I'm so alone and introverted. I never think anybody would help. I have trouble asking for help. And so as we're texting, she writes, I'm so grateful for everyone's kindness and presence and the joy there was in the field this morning. It's been a hard and a lonely path thus far, building a vision shovel by shovel, digging my way to a new life. Boy, I relate to that. I really relate to that. And then suddenly, out come all these fabulous women. Yes, I'm very, very happy because that morning was my highlight of my week too. So the challenge now is leaning in again and setting a date again and moving the ball down the field. Because as we know from that University of Kansas study, that it takes time and it takes effort. And we all need each other to be making the effort. And so the final tool that I'm going to give you is something that is so simple and so impactful. And I have so many friends that now do this that I'm stealing this from. And it's very simple. Every single day, make it a habit to text a friend, just out of the blue. And if you want to amplify this, take a selfie video. Hey, I'm just on my walk and I was thinking of you. And hey, my dog says hello. And you not only underestimate how much people like you, you underestimate how much it means to somebody when they hear from you. This isn't just me. This is research that was covered in the New York Times recently about how receiving an unexpected text from a friend makes you immediately feel connected to that person, and it makes the friendship stronger. Make it a practice every single day as you start your day to reach out to one friend with a random message. In fact, I want to share one with you. So I love my friend Glo Antonimo, and she's an incredible author and podcaster and just puts out incredible content and motivational speaker, and I learned so much from her. And she is so great about this. I want you to listen to this random message that popped in my phone literally a month ago. There was her beautiful face just sending me a video message, and I'm going to play it for you because I want you to listen to it as if she's sending this to you.
Mel, hello. It has been almost a month since our last video message. And I was reading one of my daily devotional type books, and I thought of this, and I'm like, who can I send this to? And you came to my heart, so I'm going to read it out loud. You are human. You will make mistakes. Hopefully, you'll make a whole lot of them because that means you are trying. And trying means you are fully alive. It also makes life a hell of a lot more interesting. So here's to making more mistakes. Here's to living. And here's to appreciating the ebbs and flow of life. You know, it's hard for us to like maintain equilibrium. Like we try to go through life chasing and seeking comfort and just staying happy and staying positive. But sometimes in those moments and those seasons and those valleys of depression or sadness, you know, we're meant to get something from that. And then when we come out of it, it's like we have so much more appreciation. So no need to respond. Just wanted to bless you with this message. Thinking of you, sending you love. High five.
That just like makes you feel good. And so here's what I want to tell you. I want to tell you, I love you. I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to stop telling yourself these lies and to really embrace the truth. The truth is you deserve amazing friendships. You need amazing friendships. And you are that amazing friend that somebody who is going through a very lonely season, digging their way to a new life, needs desperately right now. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want to start with a particular post that you put on social media that went crazy viral, and it really struck a nerve for me. And you posted this thing where you said, at 32 years old, I realized I was a child in an adult body. And this just hit deep for so many people. What did you mean?
Thank you for calling out that post. I think, you know, for a lot of us that can be really challenging to hear that about ourselves. And for me, if I'm speaking honestly, it was very challenging to come to that awareness. And what I met was mainly around my emotions and the way that I hadn't learned, of course, in early childhood to tolerate, to navigate, to be able to process my emotions. And in many ways, and I use this language, I think this is the part that becomes difficult, is in a lot of ways, I was very emotionally immature in the way that I handled the frustrations, the difficulties, and the stresses of life. Because the reality for me, as I think is the case, which is I think why it resonates with so many of us, is that so few of us, for many different reasons, which I'm sure we'll dive into many of which today, we didn't have those safe environments. We didn't have those emotionally attuned caregivers who themselves learned how to navigate their own emotions. So, I mean, needless to say, parenting is a large task in and of itself. And, you know, when we don't have that safety and when we don't have someone modeling, mirroring, attuning to us emotionally, what we do then appear is like a child in an adult body.
I want to take a step back because for those of you who have not read Dr. Nicole's New York Times #1 best-selling book, which is a game changer, How to Do the Work, or you don't follow her online like millions and millions and millions of people do, can you tell everybody what your life looked like at the age of 32? Because, when you talk about emotional immaturity, it's not like you were running down the street naked, taking a baseball bat to the side of a wall, like kind of rambling gobbledygook. You were high functioning and successful. So we just give everybody like, what does life for Dr. Nicole at 32 look like when you have this realization that, holy shit, I can't process my emotions maturely?
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say I wasn't able to even admit that or even have that language for what was going on at the time. What I did know was that I had finally arrived, or so I thought, to the end of all of this, achievement-based to-do list. To speak to your point, I wasn't, kind of dysfunctional in the very traditional sense. I had, in a lot of ways, I had the successful life, or at least appearance of life around me. I was in a partnership, a committed partnership. I had a successful practice after achieving my PhD. I was surrounded by, a network of supportive individuals. I was living in the city that I chose to live in. Everything seemingly on the outside, right, was reflecting this idea that I should feel good, or at least better than I was. So I think, as a lot of us do, my first feeling was a really low, disempowered, lack of fulfillment and shame. Because again, as I looked around, I kept almost telling myself, well, what is wrong with you, Nicole? Why aren't you, feeling good about yourself? Why aren't you feeling fulfilled? Why aren't you feeling even connected to this life that you created? So not having the awareness of why I was struggling right alongside with, at that point, the clients that I had been working with week after week, month after month, I wondering, feeling as a disempowered then clinician in the room, what is wrong? Why are so many of us stuck? Those of us who even have access to supportive individuals like myself in a therapeutic environment, why is the report I'm getting week after week not that I'm getting better, but that I'm getting more and more frustrated, more and more shameful, more and more stuck in these patterns? And for me, it really began with exploring, what is keeping so many of us stuck. And for me, I landed on the answer being all of the conditioning, oftentimes very stress-based, very trauma-based conditioning that, was emblematic of the childhoods that most of us have grown up in, that were creating habits and patterns that, no matter how much insight, how much awareness that we had, were keeping us disconnected from ourselves, from our life, and from our relationships.
So as you are talking and somebody's listening intently, going, wait a minute, is there a different way to experience life? Because adulthood, it's so familiar sounding that you check all the boxes. Ivy League degree, you're practicing psychologist, you are successful on the outside, you're surrounded by all these people, and you're having this internal crisis and disconnect where you're going, why am I not happy? What is wrong with me? What more could there be? How can I not figure this out? I am sure most everybody listening can relate to this. And so we're going to get into what you did. But if somebody is going, that's me right now. What is something, Dr. Nicole, that you want to tell them right now about what this means if you're experiencing this disconnection from what your life is like today and what you're feeling inside?
I speaking from the perspective of having been that person. I mean, as I, was entering my 30s, I convinced myself, because I too saw similar, complaints. I heard similar complaints, and I almost gaslit myself in a lot of ways with this idea, like you're sharing, Mel, of this must be just what adulthood is. This might just be the circumstances of the, environments, very unnatural. I was living in a city myself that many of us are living. And it took me, becoming conscious again of the very real impact of these habits and patterns to create just that little bit of space. So what I want to offer to anyone who's resonating and has that embedded belief that this is just what life is about, or maybe, a more problematic belief, I think, for ourselves is maybe this is just what my life is meant to be about. Maybe there's something inherently wrong with me, that is translating to this lack of fulfillment, this overwhelming stress, or whatever it might be for you. And so, very much speaking from that person as well, I thought that something was just, off about me. I want to share, the hope of creating that space of really, and you'll often hear me break down, as far as I see, the process of creating change into two major steps. And the first step I will always note is becoming conscious. And when we become conscious of how habitual, how patterned we are as individuals, then some of us can gift us with that little bit of space that then allows us to take that next step, which is beginning to make new choices outside of those old ingrained habits, to then be able to experience ourselves differently. And I'm really being intentional with that because, again, I think the best shifting of beliefs is when we ourselves begin to create change, begin to experience life differently. Many of us, I'm sure, have listened to motivational speakers who have said, oh, you can do this, come on this side of life, of change. And it really isn't. And again, speaking from my own experience of this, we don't believe it until we do it. But when we do become conscious, or as we begin to become conscious, we can gift ourselves with that space. Of course, does not happen overnight, but over time, we can begin to then make new choices, relieving ourselves of that shame, that belief that this is just what life is all about, or this is what my life is all about.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I love you so much. Not only because you've made a huge difference in my life, and I'm going to try to take a highlighter and call out a couple of those things that you have said that were complete paradigm shifters for me and helped me achieve level up moments in my own healing. And so I want to I want to make sure everybody heard something, which is even the awareness that you feel stuck, even the awareness that something is off, even the awareness that this isn't working is great news. Because if I'm hearing you correctly, being frustrated or feeling discombobulated in your body about your life, that is the consciousness that you're talking about?
Yes, 100%. I mean, anything that we can attune to feeling, even the lack of, because I know for a lot of us, we feel numb. For me, that was very much part of my journey, is feeling apathetic, not actually feeling much of anything. Though, to speak to your, very beautiful celebration of that awareness, the moment we start to say, okay, I don't feel anything, or I feel so depressed, or whatever it is that I do feel, when I am able to see or witness, that's what consciousness means for me, and honestly acknowledge that that's the case for my circumstances, then we are actually beginning the process of creating change.
Yeah, this is going on right now in real time in my life because we were just having dinner last night for my husband's birthday, and our daughter has asked my husband, when do you feel most alive? What experiences make you feel most alive? And after Chris answered, I turned to her and I said, I've heard you say that word alive a number of times. Where is that coming from? And she said, well, it's because I don't feel that alive in my life right now. And I think when you have those insights, you're right to go, I was celebratory because I'm trying to highlight the fact that most of us react to that insight that, holy shit, I don't feel excited by my life. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel alive. It's scary when you have that moment of consciousness.
It's incredibly scary, feeling, as many of us do when we're on that blind autopilot, especially if our autopilot is driven by a state of nervous system disconnection. I often connect many of the conversations, many of the habits and patterns that we're beginning to talk about now back to our physiological body. And there actually is a state of shutdown that many of us, I found myself living in, that created, and it wasn't to say like we were going back to the beginning, right? I was still marching through life, checking endless boxes of to-do list. It wasn't that I was apathetic sitting on a couch, though. For some of us, that's how it presents. We don't feel motivated. We procrastinate. We actually can't get up and do much of anything, though some of us are still able to continue to literally just live life going through the motions. And our emotions are what makes us a human. So feeling very much, I talk about my spaceship that I was living on, the spaceship of disconnection that again began for me in childhood, does create this feeling, this embodied existence of living like a robot. So when we rob ourselves of our emotional experience of life, we're robbing ourselves, in my opinion, of life itself. But again, as often is the case, there are reasons embedded in our mind and our body that have created that experience, even of that distance, that disconnect, that apathy, that lack of motivation, that procrastination, whatever it is, that isn't a reflection of who you really are, what is meant for you in life, but again, is an adaptive coping mechanism, usually around your earliest environments or circumstances.
Because you're an amazing person and you have the ability to impact so many people's lives. And I don't know if you realize just how powerful you are. That your energy, your love, your enthusiasm, being radically generous with it, it can change absolutely anybody's day. And when you change somebody's day in a positive way, that great day can become a great week. And that great week can roll into an amazing month. And that amazing month can turn into an incredible year. You just have no idea what somebody's dealing with. My friend Ed Millette, who is amazing, you should follow him. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He told me this story about how there is a person out in the world who was there when his father was struggling with alcoholism. And this stranger got his dad help. And Ed said if it weren't for that stranger, Ed wouldn't be here. And that one act of kindness from one person can change somebody's entire life. And you have that power. And so I want you to think as you head into your day about the image of blowing bubbles. You know when a kid is blowing bubbles and the bubbles catch the sunlight and they float around and they fly away? It feels so good, doesn't it? It makes you smile. And you can stand there on a beautiful sunny day and blow bubbles and they drift off into space. And who knows how far they go? Your energy is just like that. And you can spread good energy, and you should. How do you do that? Be generous with the I love yous. Be super generous, telling people I appreciate you. In fact, I have a habit every single day. I make it a habit to tell somebody that I appreciate them. And I do that by either reaching out to a friend and telling them that I miss them and I'm thinking about them. I have a friend who's going through a really challenging moment right now with her dad. Hospice has been called in, and I'm texting her every morning, telling her that I'm sending her a hug and that she doesn't need to text me back, but I just want her to know that I'm here for her. I tell that to people that help me in the grocery store. I tell it to anybody, honestly, because we all need to hear it. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for being here. I love complimenting people's nails or their jewelry or their hairstyle or their socks and smiling. And don't forget your family. When somebody walks in the door, how do you greet them? Do you put a big smile on your face? Do you run to the door? Do you say, welcome home? Oh my God, I hope you had a great day. I always give our son Oakley the biggest hug, and I hold it extra tight, and I tell him I'm so happy to see him. Because every time you do this, you smile, you wave, you high-five somebody, you give them a hug, you tell them that you love them, you text somebody out of the blue, you are a force for good. If you're staying in a hotel like I'm going to be tonight, leave a note for the person that's cleaning your room. a thank you, a smiley face, tell them you appreciate them. We all need to hear it. And when you become radically generous with your positive energy, with your compliments, with your enthusiasm, with your love, it spreads unbelievable waves of joy and positivity, lifting people up in ways that you'll never know. There are simple tools that you can use that act like lifelines in your life. And those tools are meaningful mantras, temporary or permanent tattoos, or there are ways that you can use even a simple Post-it note as a environmental cue. That's what a researcher calls it. You can use a simple Post-it note to act like a lifeline, to remind you that you have the power inside of you to face something. And in those moments where it really counts and you're trying to level up, that yes, you can show up in this moment and you can perform your best. And so while we're going to start with the tattoo story, which is a great story, we're going to get to a deeper topic here. And by the time you're done listening to this episode, you're going to have a phrase that you've identified that will act like a lifeline for you moving forward. And because I always say this is not just a listening podcast, it's a doing one, I'm going to ask you to do something specific. And no, it's not to go get a tattoo. So on the topic of tattoos, if you have a tattoo or you know someone who does, you know that every tattoo has a story. And mine begins just a few weeks before our 15th wedding anniversary. Can you believe this? We've been married 26 years. So this would have been 11 years ago, right? 11 years ago. Yeah, 11 years ago. 11 years ago was 2012. And Chris, let's just set the table for everybody, because 11 years ago, our life looked really different. 2012, you were still in the restaurant business. We were 800 grand in debt. We were struggling with drinking issues, and we were trying to make the ends meet.
And we thought a tattoo was going to save us.
Hey, we thought it would distract us. We decided that
No, it was our anniversary.
It was our anniversary. And so we decided that it would be cool if we got tattoos on the date of our 15th wedding anniversary. And
provided it wasn't the same tattoo.
well, see, this is the thing. I wanted to get matching tattoos. I thought it would be super cool if you and I got the exact same tattoo on our 15th wedding anniversary. And what was your response?
Never.
Yeah, I think it was no fucking way. I think you said that is so cheesy. We are bound for divorce if we get matching tattoos. We are not doing that. And so that was kind of my idea. And Chris just shot it out of the sky. Boom, not happening. And so we got.
Do you remember what my reaction was to even getting it? We had been talking about it maybe a little bit.
I don't remember. Do you remember yours?
Was it an out of the blue idea that, hey, let's do this for our anniversary, or we had talked about it before?
I think we had talked about how we both wanted to get one, and then we decided we'd get it for our 15th, and I thought we'd get matching. You said absolutely not. And then all of a sudden we went into our corners, and we were individually thinking about our tattoos. And as the date of our anniversary, August 24th, came closer and closer, and to the appointment, I started to panic because I had no idea what I wanted for my tattoo. And then all of a sudden, you guys, Chris walks into the room one day and says, I've figured out what my tattoo is going to be. Why don't you tell him the story? Because I wanted to kill you when you told me what it was going to be.
I grew up as a ski racer and was competing in races every weekend in my teenage years. And I was always that kid in the starting gate that was shaken like a leaf and worried about not the race, but the outcome. You know, I was in my head thinking about what was going to be my time and how it was going to line up. And
would it freak you out?
Yeah, it was always about the result.
Yep.
You know, the end game, if you will, for
Yep.
me. Or at least this was the observation that ultimately my dad had of me. And my dad was often at these races, and he he helped me see the racing and the course a little bit differently by constantly suggesting that I just take it one gate at a time. To just, rather than think about the big picture or the end game, just one gate at a time. And along the years, my dad and I would converse about this without ever necessarily giving it a name of a philosophy, if you will. But he wrote a letter to me about it one day. And that was my my tattoo wake up call, that I decided to pull the handwriting off of a letter my dad authored about just taking things one gate at a time. And so that became my tattoo idea.
And so describe where it is and what it is.
I put this tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm, and I didn't necessarily have a vision for having it kind of be oriented such that I could read it really easily, but ultimately it was the tattoo artist who suggested kind of the right placement of it. But it just says the word one and the word gate, one gate, written in my dad's handwriting.
It's beautiful. And so, being the shallow piece of shit that I am at times, when Chris announced that he had figured out his tattoo and that he was going to take his dead father's handwritten letter to a tattoo artist and have that tattoo artist lift those two words, one gate, in his father's handwriting and put it on his left forearm where he could see it and have as a reminder, I thought that is the best damn idea. And now I have no idea what the hell I am going to tattoo on my body. I was so pissed and so jealous that you had such a good idea. And you guys, I freaked out and stressed out until the night before we were supposed to get tattoos. The night before we were going to go into this appointment, our 15th wedding anniversary, I still had no idea what I was going to put on my body. And then luckily, a friend of ours who was one of my very first clients when I became a life coach, Deva, who owns the amazing store in Boston called Matsu. She stopped by to say hi, and we started talking about the tattoo. And I said, I have no idea what I want. She agreed. Chris's idea, that was a really good idea. Really good idea. And I
didn't know Deva was the origin of this idea for you.
Yeah. So what happened is I started saying, I don't know what to do with it. And she said, well, I know what it should be. And I'm like, you do? What should it be? And she said, it should say it shall be. I said, what? What do you mean it should say it shall be? She said, you say it all the time. I said, no, I don't. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, Mel, you have coached me for years. You always say, if you put in the work and you hold the belief that'll happen, at some point, it shall be. I had honestly never realized that I had used that phrase when coaching other people. And as she said it in that way, it just kind of went clunk. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the words it shall be on the inside of my right wrist. And it'll be both a reminder to me that if I do the work, if I have faith, if I keep my head down, and if I give up my timeline, it shall be. It'll all work out. It'll be fine. And so that was that. Now, meanwhile, there's another twist to this story. Because do you remember what happened on our actual 15th wedding anniversary?
Do I ever? That's the funniest part of the whole story.
Okay, well, tell everybody.
Well, just that Mel, you were in radio at the time.
Yeah,
right?
It was when I was a radio host. So you guys, Chris was still in the restaurant business.
So
we were struggling financially.
She was doing some show in Boston, and it wasn't the tattoo artist. You had some show talking about tattoos. Correct. Right?
Correct.
Throwback. And
All these people called in.
And they suggested like the best tattoo parlor in town.
Correct.
If you're going to get a tattoo, you have to go to this guy.
Yes.
And you, of course, took it upon yourself to book us the appointment, which was at that point had to have been 6 months out.
Yes, and they had a huge wait list, so you couldn't even get in until like 4 months out. We booked this thing 6 months out, you guys.
So you
put
plan
down
it
this
for
big ass deposit.
for our anniversary.
We have a babysitter. We're going into Boston. We got our appointment. We're about to pull on the Mass Pike. And what happens?
We're pulling out of the driveway, and you're like, well, where we go? Let's get the address of this place. And then you said, well, let me just call him just to make sure, let him know we're coming. And you call him, and sure enough, the guy says, I don't know, we got you on the books for next week.
And I start pleading with him. Oh, no, you can't. We made this 6 months. No. It's next week. It's a week from today. But that's not our anniversary. I never would have screwed this up. This must be a mistake. Can you just fit us in now? No.
And we were going away. We couldn't even make the following
Yeah,
week
but
happen
also
anyway.
the thing was, is it was supposed to be on the anniversary.
Right.
So now here we are with a babysitter. We have our tattoos. You've got your letter. I've got my phrase. We have no appointment. I start calling tattoo parlors because we decide, let's just head into Boston. And I'm like, how hard could this be? Do you know the first 5 or 6 tattoo parlors that I called were booked? Like no openings. I didn't know you couldn't just walk into a tattoo parlor. Who the hell is getting all these tattoos? So I finally call the 6th or 7th place. And it was a place that was right around the corner from this apartment that we used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when we first moved to Boston before we had kids for you to go to graduate school. And the guy answers the phone and he says, sure, come on in. And then he says, what's the name? And I say, Mel Robbins. And he goes, you mean from WTKK, Mel Robbins? I thought I recognized this voice. I love your show. My wife's a huge fan of yours. Come on in. It turned out to be a guy that listened to my old radio show. So we drive to this place. The guy is this amazing, big, bearded teddy bear of a guy. He gives us this big old bear hug. Chris goes first because here's the next twist that happened. It had completely been lost on me that I hadn't even picked out a font or handwriting. And so I had the phrase, it shall be, but I had no idea what I wanted it to look like or how big it was going to be. So while Chris got his tattoo, I pulled up Microsoft Outlook and I started going through the font choices and ended up picking the only font that looked somewhat cool, which turned out to be something called like Zaftigs or Dabbigs or Zad. It was like a Z. Printed it out on his printer. And that became what I permanently put on my body. And I was having like doubts and second guesses, and Chris's looked so good. But I was just like, why didn't I think that I should have like thought about the font?
It looks a little bit like your handwriting though, so that's good.
It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I love my tattoo. I love my tattoo. And so I've got these sort of curved, it shall be right on my inside wrist. And big hooky things, and we'll if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. We'll put it on the stories. And the thing that I love about this, and this is why it's so important for us to talk about meaningful mantras today, and environmental cues that you can use to help you stay steady, to help you tap into that courage and that confidence and that power that's inside of you. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at this tattoo. And these words, it shall be, they are a lifeline for me. You know, when I think about moments where I was failing at something or life was going off the rails, I would see those words, it shall be. And I'd take a deep breath and I'd put my head down and I'd say, Mel, you just got to keep believing it's going to all work out. You got to keep putting in the work. If you're a good, kind person, it'll happen. Maybe not on your timeline, but just keep going. When times were tough, these 3 words, it shall be, reminded me that this is just a moment And like all moments, this will pass. And now our puppy, Homie, is like wanting to go to the bathroom. It shall be.
No, but it really, thinking about the question that Jonathan wrote in and saying how you're so intentional in everything that you do, it was a very thoughtful question. And I would agree that your application of that in life is very pronounced, and interesting how you didn't necessarily see it like Deva saw it. And how the only thing that was not intentional about it was the scramble to get the right tattoo before the evening itself.
Well, you know what's great about this?
Actually, I shouldn't say that, because you booked the appointment. We had it on the anniversary. Like, we were organized. We were ready to roll. There was intentionality.
The entire story of the tattoo is a demonstration of the philosophy it shall be. Because nothing went according to plan. And yet we just took it one gate at a time. And I was fierce in my belief that it was all just going to work out. What are the odds that the appointment is on the wrong date, or that the first 5 places I call are not available for appointments, but the one that is happens to be a guy that listened to my little local Saturday radio show and recognized my name and voice? Like, it's just a little bit of optimism that acts like a lifeline for me. And it reminds me that it's going to work out, that I have the power within me to face things. That's how I've been using this phrase, it shall be, over the last 11 years, because these have not been the easiest 11 years of our life.
I would argue some of the hardest.
The hardest, for sure. I mean, when I think about the state that you were in when you left the restaurant business just 2 years after I got this tattoo, and you just checked out of life. You're like, I'm getting sober. I have to heal. I have to take care of myself. And for 2 years, you were just comatose. And I'm like in survival mode. And I would look at this, my tattoo, it shall be, and it gave me faith that if I just kept working hard, we'd figure it out. That we'd figure out how to pay the bills, that I would figure out how to build this business, that you would figure out how to heal and find your way back to yourself and to me. And even things like moving up here to southern Vermont and how hard that was. And feeling like I've just turned my whole life upside down. And yet there was this deeper knowing that drove our decision to move and to change our life profoundly, from living outside of Boston to being in this tiny rural town. And on those days that I just felt so lost, I would look at my wrist and go, it shall be. It's going to work out. Like, I can do this. And even with the podcast, everybody was like, you know how crowded that is. You know how there's 5 million podcasts. I was like, you know what? I'm playing the long game. It shall be. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to go for it. And I even feel that like when our kids are struggling, like it helps me, this phrase, it shall be, to put almost like a beacon out in the future. It's a reminder that at some point the road ahead is easier and great things happen. And it gives me faith to keep going.
I think the location of that tattoo is also properly aligned with you and your own just being reminded of that, right? Because if you had that tattoo on the back of your shoulder,
I'd never see it.
Where you weren't seeing it all day, every day, you had always wanted to put it right. Something, whatever it was, you were thinking.
Well, why get a tattoo and hide it?
Right.
You know, I want to tell you a quick story about how perspective changing things can be. And then we're going to hear your story, Amy. So I remember when I was in law school, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in a teeny tiny town in Michigan, and then I go to college in a teeny tiny town in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I was sort of like your meat and potatoes kind of gal. I was not the biggest experimental eater like I am now. And I remember one of my really good friends, shout out to Sydney, she was a super cool lady, and she grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and she was multicultural family, like super cool. And I remember she invited me to leave the campus, the law school campus, and go into Boston
Okay.
to this restaurant called Jay's. And her boyfriend, who was older, was going to take the two, law school students with no money out. And it was a Thai restaurant. And I had never been in a Thai restaurant before. And so we sit down. I had no idea what to order. And so they just order the pad Thai. When this thing arrived in front of my, plate there, when this
What
plate
did you think when you saw that pad Thai that you'd never seen before?
I was like, what the hell is the eggs and chicken and shrimp and these noodles? And it's like pasty, tacky, weird texture and peanuts and bean sprouts. So I just shoveled a fork in and I just took a bite. It was like a unicorn in my mouth. It was the most delicious thing I had ever. And I had this thought, there is an entire world I have been missing out on because I just didn't know. I just didn't know.
Yes.
And that is what this conversation's about. It's like a pad Thai for your career. There is a whole world that you have not considered as seriously as I want you to because you just didn't know. Like I didn't know you could make money online. Amy's the kind of person that knows how to tap into that confidence that is inside you to make a pivot. And I know that reinvention is a hot topic. Our project on Audible, Reinvent Your Life with Mel Robbins, is #1 on Audible. Everybody is feeling this need to change something about their lives. And when you take your career and your ability to make money into an entirely different level, it's extraordinary how that impacts your life. And Amy has been able to not only teach herself how to do that, but to teach so many other people how to do that, how to find financial freedom, how to get control of your time, how to create a life where you get to work when and where and with whomever you want to work. And do not tune this out. This is possible for you. I don't care what your life looks like right now. This is possible for you. And that's why I wanted Amy to sit here and give you a zero-cost masterclass in thinking differently and taking control of your freaking life starting today. So Amy, what was your pad Thai moment in your career?
My pad Thai moment was 14 years ago. I was working for peak performance coach Tony Robbins, and I had an amazing job. I was the director of content, traveling the world, working on the content that he did on stage. However, I didn't realize in that moment that I had never been free. And here's what happened. Tony brought in a bunch of business owners to the San Diego office. They happened to be all men, and they were making money online. And so he brought them into this office. It was this big oak table, and I was called in to take notes. So
okay, so first of all,
yes.
Were you annoyed by that?
Well, it was kind of common for the content department to take notes. But yeah, there's a little bit of me like, I want to be in the action. I want to be doing the things. But yeah, I was on a side table.
Oh, so you were not even at the big table with the boys.
No.
You were on the side,
I was on the side
taking the notes.
Yes.
Okay.
So here I came into this meeting, but thank God I did, because here's what happened. I started to take notes, and these guys started to talk about their businesses, what they do, what life looks like, what their lifestyle is, what their family life looks like. Like, they were really talking about their whole experience as business owners. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a second. They're working when they want, where they want, how they want. They're creating these amazing products. They're being as creative as they want to be. They're on their own time and on their own dime. And I realized I have never been free. I have never been my own boss. I will always hit a glass ceiling. I will always have to ask for a raise, always have to ask if I could take vacation. I was not the boss of my own life or my business. And in that moment, a light bulb went off, and I thought, I want it. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know how to do any of it, but I want it. And so that was the moment for me. But the next thing that happened was this flood of doubt. And I looked to my friend who was in the meeting with me, and I said, I have no skill where I could be my own boss. I know nothing that I could be my own boss.
I want to stop right there, because I think this moment where you're sitting in a meeting and you experience something.
Yeah.
This like wake up call happens in your body. And I've had a moment like that. It's way bigger than a pad Thai moment.
Yeah.
I was sitting in an audience And I was at an Oprah Winfrey, like kind of one of these live your best life tours. This would have been a decade ago,
Okay.
decades ago, actually, probably 2 decades ago at this point. And I was there because I was networking to try to get clients for my life coaching business. I had just started this on the side. I was working full time, doing business development for a advertising agency in the big tech kind of bubble that happened in the early 2000 timeframe. And on the side, I was trying to build a business as a life coach, full of doubt. So I go to this Oprah Winfrey concert. It was actually it was like a event that she held, a one-day summit to like live your best life. And so I'm sitting in the big audience and Oprah's on stage, and then she introduces this woman that I'd never heard of. Her name was Martha Beck. And Martha Beck walks out. And I don't even remember what the hell she said. I had never heard of her. I had no clue what she did, but she started talking and there was something inside of me that was like, I want that. And it was the same thing you're talking about, which is this taste of I've never thought about the word free, because there I had lied to my employer. I had taken the day and I had told them I was somewhere else and I had gone to this thing for myself.
Yeah.
And so here I am completely out of integrity, getting paid by somebody else to sit in a place where I'm prospecting for my side hustle that hasn't even launched yet. And I realize when she walks on the stage, holy shit, that's what I want. And I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew that I wanted the freedom that she seemed to have. She was writing books. She was clearly writing for Oprah. She had written her first book. She was now talking about that first book on a stage. I didn't know what I would write about. I didn't know what I would speak about. I was scared to think about being on that stage. That is the moment. And so I want to hit pause and I want to talk to the person, you, right now listening to us. I want to talk to you because I need you to start to pay attention to those moments. You don't have to have the answers to change your life. You have to have that moment where you go, I want something more for myself. And what I wanted to be able to go to an event without lying to my boss. Well, I could have just not lied, but you know what I mean. I wanted to be able to go to an event because I was going to go to an event. I wanted to be able to work when I wanted to work, but I did not know how the hell do you go from that moment to knowing what the hell the right next step is? Because you're right. What happens next is, well, you're dumb. You got nothing to offer. You're this, you're that. Like, how did you go from, okay, there's all these dudes sitting around the table. I'm basically the secretary, no offense to secretaries, in the corner. And I am sitting here being exposed to something that I'm not part of this club.
Yes. So the first thing, all those doubts came rushing in. And then I learned something a long time ago that if you're watching someone do something and you feel a little bit jealous, like, look what they have, or angst around it, which I had. Like, I wanted what they had, even though I didn't totally get it. Whenever you have a feeling of jealousy or angst or you want it, ask yourself, what do they have that you want? Like, get really clear. What is it about their life that you think is so attractive or you'd like to go through it? Because I had to get clear about what I wanted. And in that moment, I thought, they get to be their own boss. Like, that's what they have that I have never had. So I think clarity in terms of what you want is the first big step. You talk about that a lot. What do you want? And so once I got clear on, I don't want a job anymore, I want to call the shots, then I had to start thinking, what would I do? Because I had no clue. So for the next few months, I kind of went through this process that now I teach called the sweet spot, which is figuring out what might you want to do.
Wow. Okay. After doing something so extraordinary, and you also have made a huge difference in women's lives around the world because you are extraordinarily philanthropic. $40 million worth of product and monetary donations to people that are struggling with cancer. And what is next for you? Because you are right now in the middle of figuring out on this next leg of the journey called life, what your purpose is
Mhm.
and what your next thing is going to be. What tools are you using or how are you thinking about it? And it's really important topic because so many people, particularly after the last 3 years, have had a profound life change thrust on them.
Yes.
And they're looking ahead at an open road, wondering what their purpose is going to be, what they're going to do. Can you just speak to that person for a minute about
Mhm.
how you're going about figuring it out?
Yeah. So one thing I just want to remind everyone too, Mel, because I think people put so much pressure on themselves that their purpose has to be their job or their
Hmm.
next job. And a lot of times we can be doing a job that's fine. And maybe for family reasons, we need that health coverage and we need that paycheck and your purpose can be found in the things you do outside of that, right? There's a lot of ways to listen to that knowing and your gut and then when it feels right, you know that's aligned with who you're born to be
Mm-hmm.
and how you're born to show up in the world. And so for me right now, there's that famous saying, just because you can, should you, right? There's
Mm.
a big part of me now with all these, could I go launch a bunch of businesses? Yes. Right? And what I feel drawn to is literally because here's the deal. Yes, I've built a $1 billion business. Yes, I have other companies that I invest in.
You
But
also are married and you have two beautiful children,
yes, a
and
2-year-old and a
you're
4-year-old.
incredibly devoted to your family.
Hmm. Well, and here's the thing is like that's all part of my story, but when I look at my real story, it meaning the part that ties deeply to my purpose, like my real story is a girl who went from not believing in herself to
Mm.
learning how to. And so when I wake up in the morning and I think about the things I've done so far, the things I hope for my kids for, and how I built a $1 billion business, it was really through seeing women, helping them see themselves
Mm.
and believe in themselves and believe they are worthy and enough. And that's what fires me up every morning. So when I think about what I'm stepping into next,
Yeah.
I wrote Believe It, which is about my book about how to go from underestimated to unstoppable, donated all the proceeds. I'm donating all the proceeds from that 100%. I funded leadership.
Hold on. Let's just underscore that. So she writes a New York Times bestseller, donates all the proceeds from the book
Yeah.
to nonprofits, just donates them.
Yeah. And the book is just,
It's
from,
incredible.
thank you.
It's like a little manual that you should have on your bedside table because Jamie will be smiling at you
Yes.
and you'll see that you're not alone, that we're in this together. And her example of learning how to go from doubting herself to believing in herself is the journey that each and every one of us is on.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of in this soup of knowing that this is the area where you want to focus the impact, but you're
Yeah.
not being a very, very, very good friend of yours. I know that you're not, it's still a fuzzy target, so to speak, as
Mm,
our friend Dean would say, it's a fuzzy target. If somebody kind of has a sense that there's something more, but they don't quite have they haven't had that aha moment yet that
yeah.
you had almost 14 years ago sitting on that television set.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make makeup and I'm gonna bring real women and I'm gonna show my skin and I'm gonna
Yeah.
solve this problem. I'm gonna make people think that they're beautiful because they are beautiful no matter what their body. And you did it. You did it. But if you're in the soup and you
Yeah.
don't have the vision yet, is there an exercise or something that you would recommend that we all do while we're waiting for that clarity and that epiphany to strike?
Yeah. Two things. One, waiting for it to be perfect can be the lowest vibration, biggest excuse,
Hmm.
number one reason why people just never try and never get started. So I think it's rare to ever have complete clarity. Like this is exactly perfect for it. And that's why, I think two things. I think just taking a step and seeing how it feels is good, tuning into your knowing. I also think, Dean, so you mentioned our friend Dean who was saying it's a fuzzy target. he was saying something to me recently about, almost like when you're about to aim a bow and arrow and you're about to let go of the arrow. He's like, you can aim and turn it and twist it a few times before you let go of the arrow. It's okay to wait a little bit and just make sure you're going to aim at the right thing. Um, and so this year, for example, I've kind of been doing that. I've been saying, how do things feel? I have the gift and blessing of being here with you right now.
How does this feel?
Feels amazing.
So does this mean
I
you're
love
going to
you.
do a talk show?
Maybe you could teach me all the ropes, Mel, and then yeah.
Hardly.
But
I am a failed talk show host.
okay. Don't even.
That is true. My talk show got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because
I can tell you. Go ahead.
well, I was going to apply the lessons from Professor Purpose, but I'd like to hear you tell me why.
I think our steps are ordered. Why? I think because you are going to own all of what you're doing and make it so much bigger than anyone else who owned it could have made it.
Mm-hmm.
So, by that definition, I think you're the most successful talk show host. That's the first thing.
At least in the podcast. It is.
But no, I think it's all going to be the same. I think a show is a show. You know what I mean? The world's changing so rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And I love too that you can do this show on your terms.
It's
Right?
true.
You can do it on your terms, and that's why it is so huge, because it's on your terms.
Well, like you, and maybe this is one of the reasons why we have become such dear friends in such a short period of time. And I often say on the show that I truly believe that the best years of your life and the best friendships that you'll have are on the road ahead. But a lot of the reason why we connected so profoundly, even though we are different in many, many ways,
Yeah.
is that it goes back to the Denny's waitress. Like at my core, I am still the waitress making money, waiting tables at the Red Rooster Tavern on Scenic Drive in North Muskegon, Michigan. Same as you, stalling because the fryer has now broken and the fried perch is not coming out. And I'm talking to the tourists from Chicago and I'm treating everybody kindly. And I know that all I want to do is impact people's lives that are just got their head down and they don't feel very seen or heard. And I want to make them know that they have it within them to tap into this incredible power inside them to create whatever they want in life.
Yes.
And it starts with believing
Yes.
that you can and having somebody like you on who has demonstrated that is really
Yeah.
important for people to hear.
On that topic of friendship, I love so much that you are the friend that people need to your audience. Like, and what I mean by that, and I'm honored to be the friend for this episode with you to everyone. And what I mean by that, Mel, is I think you and I love each other for who we authentically are. The Denny's waitress, the Red Rooster waitress, right? And we also are friends that help pull each other into who we're
Yes.
becoming.
Yes.
And I think so often, and that's why I love, and your show also, as you know, of course, but I just want to call it out that your show can be this for people who feel like, how do I find those friends that help pull me into my future? Because so often the people around us, while they might mean really, really well and love us dearly, pull us into our past, or for their own comfort zone, want us to stay the person we were or are. And it's so important, because we're talking about purpose,
Yeah.
to try and add friends to your circle who truly want the best for you, not just what they think is the best for them in you, but like want the best for you. And you do that for me. I do that for you.
Yes.
This show, your show, I know does that for people as well.
Yes.
And so honored to be part of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just highlight one final thing, and then I have a surprise to tell you listening to us right now. Yes, we have a surprise for you. It's really exciting with Professor Purpose over here. And I'm having like a menopause moment where like the drawbridge is open in my brain, and now the drawbridge is not closing and connecting the dots on this profound thing that I wanted to say. So let me see if I can
Everything you say is
order this.
profound.
Hardly, but I appreciate you saying that. I think one of the things that I've learned, and it took me a long time to learn this, is that there is so much success and happiness to go around. And when you lift other people up
Yeah.
and you reach out for help, that your success comes faster and it's richer,
Yes.
both emotionally and in terms of monetarily. And I just remembered what I wanted to say, and it's this. And it goes back to purpose. It goes back to that knowing and staying connected to your intention and this unique thing that you have to give to the world. It is not only your responsibility in life to stay connected to your knowing,
Mm.
it is your responsibility to advocate for it because only you have seen it in your heart and mind. Of course, your family says no. They don't even know what you're talking about because they only know the person that you've been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the investor is going to say no. Why? Because they only know what they know. Your knowing is yours.
Yeah.
And you have to stay connected to it. And you have to keep describing it or advocating for it or explaining it to people so that they can see it too. And it's not until you demonstrate what you see in your own heart and mind by continuing to walk toward it, continuing to talk about it, continuing to believe in it, that it will become a reality. And that's why people say no,
Mm.
because it's your knowing,
Mm-hmm.
not theirs. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in a weird way, a ton of no's or a lot of friction or bumping up against things as you're trying, and you can't understand why don't people get this? Why isn't this working? It's because it's your knowing, not theirs. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.